I just want to say thank you for that.
Thanks for coming to City Council and reminding them that affordable housing is really personal and important.
Yes.
So we want to give Bill a little idea of who he's speaking to. So if you could just quickly say your name and what organization or church you might be part of. So why don't you start?
Hey, Kim.
I'm Kim Pop and All Saints Church.
Edward Schottky with Pop.
I'm Ann Hickenbottom. I am here for myself. I'm also on the staff of Women Custodian.
I'm Cameron Howard again.
Hi, I'm Adrian Spires. I work at California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and I belong to Friendship Pasadena Church and Pasadena Church.
Hi,
We're
Carol
going to have an
Daly.
info booth, by the way, at your Central Park Fun and Fair station.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm Jill Shook with Making Housing a Community.
What do you say?
And
I'm Annie Fox. I live on Marengo and Del Mar, and in a past life, I worked for LA Boys.
Great.
I'm Carol Daly. I'm with Foothills Kitchen, Monrovia, and I'm dealing directly with people that have become unhoused.
I'm Sonia Byrd. I'm retired from the Attorney General's office. It's a wonderful life. I go to Saddleback in Lake Forest.
I'm Jennifer Lynn. I'm an attorney and I go to a number of churches.
Hi, I'm Anne Marie, and I am a part of GPAHG, and I am the ADU chair.
A lot of interesting ADU bills on the governor's desk right now.
six. She's been following like
6? I thought there were only 3.
6.
My favorite one anyway.
What's your favorite?
Well, it'll just be interesting to see if, what is it, 68? 68 gets, AB 68 gets approved, because in it, it includes the right to do 2 ADUs per unit. Can you imagine?
Boy, that'd be awesome.
Per unit,
Wow.
per
Who did that?
lot.
Who was the?
I think it's Ting. Ting.
That's great. Well, we have about, if you could take a half an hour and leave enough time for questions,
Sure.
that'd be great.
Sure. You ready?
And after that, we have our meeting that we have every month, and so I think you all will stay for that. While you're here, if you haven't signed, feel free to go sign in, and there's some ways to be of help for our big fundraiser and event on the 2nd of November. So you might want to help bring snacks or do the registration table. So just go over there and see what's available. Thanks. Go for it.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me here today, and thank you for caring about affordable housing and homelessness. I can tell you that your work and your advocacy is making a difference in the city. Jill asked me to talk about a couple things, countering gentrification, or gentrification, and she asked me to speak about gentrification and overconcentration. So I elaborated a little bit, countering gentrification and overconcentration of affordable housing, and then I added recent and upcoming affordable housing efforts. So that's basically those 3 things that I want to talk about today. So gentrification, what is gentrification? There's lots of definitions, but I like this one because it's very kind of streamlined. It's the increase in rents and housing values. I added the underline. The increase in rents and housing values triggered by an influx of more affluent residents into a low-income neighborhood. Okay? So there are impacts to this, and here are a few of them. One is that the longtime residents cannot afford to stay in their neighborhood because this is typically in a low-income neighborhood, and the rents and the housing costs are going up. Oftentimes results in a loss of diversity, economic and otherwise, and then also a loss of a sense of community. That many of these communities have a very strong sense of community, and that could be lost as the population turns over relatively quickly. So what are the countermeasures? There's lots of articles on the internet about here are 5 things, here are 7 things you can do to counter gentrification. The most concrete one, and the one that appears on every list, is create more affordable housing. That is the most concrete one. So create more affordable housing, and this is, when we talk about affordable housing, we talk about affordable housing where the rents are restricted to certain income levels. Because the reason why we have a housing crisis in LA and in many other places is because the rents and the housing costs have been rising at a much faster rate than incomes have. So the amount of rent increase is not tied to people's incomes. It's tied to a market. And the market has far been outstripping the increase in income. So the kind of housing that is most really affordable, long-term affordable, is when the rents can only be increased as incomes go up. So the incomes and the rents, the increases stay the same. Otherwise, we could end up in a situation which we've been in for the last many years, where rents are increasing much faster than people's income. Therefore, people are having a hard time to afford the housing because that gap just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So we want to create more affordable housing. We want to preserve the affordable housing that currently exists. And we also want to pay attention, if possible, to something that's referred to as NOAH, which is naturally occurring affordable housing. So these are units where the rents are not deed restricted, but the landlord has just kept the rents low and below market for whatever reason, usually because these buildings are on the older side, but it provides an important source of affordable housing. For instance, my department runs a rental assistance program where we help to pay people's rent, about 1,400 households a month. That's the biggest piece is the Section 8 program, but there are some other similar kind of programs. And almost all of those 1,400 people live in something like naturally occurring affordable housing. They live in the older apartment buildings. These are the ones where most of them are located. So preserving naturally occurring affordable housing is something that is a real need and something that can help to counteract gentrification. The other thing that can be done is people's homes, single-family homes, particularly those owned by households that have lived in the community for a long time, could be repaired. A lot of times these are older homes owned by low-income homeowners, and when the house starts to deteriorate, they don't necessarily have the funds to repair them. And so selling out seems to be or cashing out seems to be a better and better option for them. But if we can help to affordably rehab their homes, then they can stay in the community, they can hold on to their homes much, much longer. We want to facilitate accessory dwelling units, to build more ADUs, and we want to fully utilize the rental assistance programs, so like Section 8. And those of you who may or may not know that the maximum rents that we're allowed to pay with the Section 8, under the Section 8 program, they're called fair market rents. That's actually what they're called, a fair market rent. But they're not actually what the market is. They're actually in a hot market, in a high market like Pasadena's, they're at least several $100s a month less than market, and sometimes many hundreds of dollars a month less than market, which means that it's hard for households who have a Section 8 voucher to find a landlord that will actually accept it. And so it's important for us to try to figure out ways to fully utilize our rental assistance resources. Okay, so I want to talk about each one of these ones in a little bit more detail and let you know what we have done and what we are doing. In terms of creating more affordable housing, so we're doing quite a bit. We are producing new affordable homeownership units. These are like affordable condominiums. We are producing more affordable rental units. We're producing permanent supportive housing units, which are for extremely low-income households. And we have an inclusionary program that is doing both also, okay, rental units and ownership units. So I will show you some examples, but for the affordable homeownership projects, there's the Summit Grove development, which was built just down the street here on Orange Grove, at Orange Grove and Summit. We have another that was completed last year. We have another development under construction right now, which is the Decker Gill Court project. That's up on Fair Oaks, where Penn, I think, dead ends into Fair Oaks. That's where the development is. And then on the affordable rental properties, a couple of them that are close by here, Heritage Square Senior Apartments, which was completed a couple years ago, and then which is for very low-income seniors, and then Orange Grove Gardens, which is just right down the street over here.
Is that on Orange Grove?
It's on Orange Grove, and that's where families. It's almost across the street from Community Arms, almost across the street. It's sort of, well, I'll show you a picture of it. You'll probably recognize it. And then for permanent supportive housing for homeless households, we completed Marv's Place, which is for formerly homeless families. And then we are working on Heritage Square South, which will be for homeless seniors. That's important because homeless seniors has become our largest subpopulation of our homeless population, and it's also the fastest growing. Because you consider seniors who are on fixed incomes, if their rents keep going up, their income does not go up, it's basically been flat, and they're unable to keep up with the cost of housing. And it's very difficult for them to increase their income. They can't just go out and get a job. Many of them are very elderly, many of them are disabled. It's hard for seniors to get hired anyway. So we're seeing more and more homeless seniors, not just in Pasadena, but throughout the whole of LA County. Okay. The other thing that we like to do is to preserve the affordable housing that we have here. So a couple of the projects that we have, we completed the Groves, which is over on, one is on Raymond, and one is on Mountain. I'll show you some pictures. I think you'll recognize the project. And then we're working on 2 projects right now. So these are the Concord Apartments, senior apartments. There's 150 units of very low-income senior apartments down by the Convention Center on Cordova. And then also La Villa Lake, which is over on Lake Avenue, north of Mountain. And La Villa Lake was a affordable housing project where that was lost. It actually went to market rate, but now it's coming back to become affordable again.
What's the address of that one?
1070 North Lake. 1070
That's the one
North
that
Lake.
was senior housing.
That's right. That's
And
right.
it's coming back?
It's coming back as very low income senior housing.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really marvelous.
Is that a done deal?
No, City Council hasn't approved it, but it's coming to City Council in October or November.
So that's the one where they have all that parking problem?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's now gonna be going back to being
Yeah.
a senior? Wow.
Yeah, it's a huge win for us.
Good job.
That's been
And
excellent.
Peggy
Um,
Renner, she came and told us about it.
Really spearheaded by Councilmember Mark McAustin.
That's
on that
great.
particular.
That's-
But we've come up with a real win-win-win situation there.
That's
For the
awesome.
neighbors, for the owner, for the tenants, and for the city, it's really positive. And then preserving naturally occurring affordable housing. The reason why it's difficult to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing, this is just like an older apartment building. Let's say there's like a 20 unit, 30 unit older apartment building. The reason why it's difficult to preserve that is because all of the existing affordable housing funding sources are very difficult, if not impossible, to use on buildings that are already occupied. And so it's very difficult to make that happen. So we need a new funding source that's specifically designed for acquiring these existing buildings. And so we are working with a nonprofit called LIST, the Local Initiative Support Corporation, LIST, who has a fund like this in Washington, D.C. And so we have connected them together with the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, and we're trying to put together a new fund that would be specifically for preserving naturally occurring affordable housing throughout the San Gabriel Valley. So hasn't been done yet. We've had some meetings. It looks positive, but it hasn't been done yet. But we hope that will be happening in the near future.
I know there's been some discussion about providing some green initiatives in exchange for affordability. Has that been looked at?
I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to.
Solar and
Well,
whatever. different
affordable
initiatives.
housing, the affordable housing industry has been at the forefront of green technology. I mean, the most green multifamily buildings in Pasadena are affordable housing projects. So like the Hudson Oaks Senior Project, that's LEED Platinum. And that's, so affordable housers have been at the forefront of that because saving those operating expenses is very,
Yeah. But in
conducive
terms
to
of NOAA
affordable housing.
providing that for naturally occurring in exchange.
I haven't seen any program like that, specific like that. I haven't seen anything really effective for NOAA. That's why we're trying to start something new. Yeah. Okay, so some of the projects, you'll recognize them. So this is Summit Grove. This is one of the affordable home ownership projects that we've developed, a couple open last year. And then this is the one that's under construction right now. It's called Deckerville Court. That's up at Fair Oaks, where Penn dead ends into Fair Oaks. So those are both home ownership, affordable home ownership projects. This is one of our affordable rental developments. This is Heritage Square North Senior Apartments for very low-income seniors. This is the Orange Grove Gardens project. You recognize that, Ed?
Oh, yeah, that's by,
Abode.
Joe's.
Yeah, next to Joe's.
Just-
Next to Joe's.
just
Yep.
East of Joe's.
That's right. Just east of Joe's. That's right. Yeah, so that's for families. And then Marv's Place is permanent supportive housing for homeless families. That was completed a couple years ago. And then on the inclusionary side, I will talk more about inclusionary housing, but here are a couple examples. The Westgate Apartments, which has 97 very low-income inclusionary units there. And then Haskett Court, which was an example of a developer who did the met their inclusionary requirements off-site. So they acquired this site. And
Where is this located?
that's on California, just west of Lake, on the south side of the street.
Tea House used to be there.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's the offsite
Yep,
place?
yep, that's the offsite.
Across from the building.
And then this is the Grove. So this was this is the one of the two sites that's called the Groves now. Used to be called Northwest Manor. These two sites, and Manor, for whatever reason, historically has a bad connotation here in Pasadena. So there's a strong desire on the part of some to change the name, and so the Groves is what it became.
That's east of El Molino, right?
Right around there. Yeah, right around there. It's two sites. One is on Raymond and one is on Mountain. And again, these were affordable housing developments that could have been sold as market rate, but we helped to fund a nonprofit to come in and acquire it and keep it, rehab it, and then keep it affordable. And then this is the senior housing project called the Concord Senior Housing Project, and we're getting ready to completely redo this particular development. Should hopefully start construction around like May or so next year.
Is that a hotel conversion?
No, it's an existing very low-income senior apartment building.
And it was built to be.
Yes, yeah.
Long time.
So it's preserving that, and
How many floors is that? Do you know?
I think it's like 11.
Is it over here on the building? Yeah.
No, it's on Cordova and Marengo.
So what's the cost for restoring something like that per unit or as much?
It's a relatively high amount. I don't know the exact amount. I can email it to you if you send me a question. Yeah.
I guess the question really has to do with the cost of new construction versus preservation.
Oh, rehab is preservation is less.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
like half or
Yeah.
quarter?
No, it depends on the acquisition price, because some of the buildings, like this one, happens to be in a very nice location, so the acquisition price is high. Yeah. Yeah.
There are two lots for sale on South Marengo. Both are multi-residential. One has 8 units and 2 structures, and the other one is 4 like little bungalow homes. Now, does the city get involved? I mean, when something like that comes on the market, how would the housing office or find out about it and make other suggestions?
Well, about, I want to say 3 weeks ago, the city council approved the city housing department acquiring more properties. And I will show you what we have. We own 11 properties right now, individual units, 11 individual units. And so we have authorization to go up to 36. And, but we have to have the funding to acquire it, and probably something on South Marengo is probably pretty high acquisition prices. Yeah, so it's probably way out of our price range. But the other countermeasures is repairing single-family homes. So the city of Pasadena has a program called Under One Roof, and Under One Roof provides a whole suite of free services to low and moderate income homeowners. Part of it is done by Water and Power. Part of it is the MASH program, which is under the housing department. So we will paint houses for free. We will build handicapped ramps. We'll install solar on their roofs. And then the Neighborhood Housing Services of Los Angeles County we fund them to provide single-family loans, very low interest rate loans. So if somebody needs a new roof, we can provide them a very, very low interest rate loan. In terms of the ADUs, we have some upcoming pilots to help to pilot some ADUs. One is some financial incentives to bring existing illegal ADUs up to code, and the other one is to help to build new ADUs by providing construction financing. So we have some pilots that will be rolling out hopefully in the next few months. And then we want to fully utilize the rental assistance program. And so this is one of the reasons why we went to City Council to get approval for us to acquire more property, so that 10 of the properties that we own right now are being rented out to very low income households. And this is important because we have lost about 115 landlords who formerly used to participate in our Section 8 program. In about the last 8 years, we lost about 115 of these landlords. And so the city is stepping in to acquire some of these units, basically to become a landlord, kind of as last resort. And so we've been doing that, and it's been pretty successful. So here's an example of one of the rehab units. This little house is right over on Elmira, right over here off of Orange Grove. So this was it before, and that's it after. And in terms of the city-owned properties, those are all the properties that we own right now. This is the slide is a little bit out of date. It says number 11 is an escrow. Number 11 actually we've closed on, and that is a Caltrans house that we will use for rapid rehousing, shared housing, for those of you who know what that is. But all the rest of them are rented up to very low income seniors, vets, persons with HIV/AIDS, those who are just difficult to house. They may have a rental voucher, but they have a very hard time actually finding a unit. So we're providing units so that they can remain in Pasadena. Yep.
I'm going to make sure I'm seeing that correctly. Those properties are all south of the freeway? Is that
Correct. That is correct.
So this doesn't appear like there's, a reason we're bringing it up is that there's always the talk of over-concentration of affordable housing in northwest Pasadena.
Right. And this is not doing that.
But there seems to be a lot in this area, south of the freeway.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to acquire. We prioritize sites that are outside of northwest Pasadena. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a waiting list, or how do you choose who the tenants are going to be?
We, when units become available, we advertise it on a free website called PasadenaHousingSearch.com, and then people apply, and then we have a property management company that vets them. But they all have to be very low income households.
And then the first choice is for those who live or work in Pasadena.
Absolutely. There's a local Pasadena
And
preference.
so when you say there's 11 properties, that's just 11 units?
Yep.
Okay, so each property only has one.
Up until the last one, the Caltrans house will have three formerly homeless women living in there.
Okay.
Yes?
How does Union Station Homeless Services fit into all this?
How do they fit into all of this?
Well, they manage Mars Place, I know, in Centennial.
They provide services for Mars Place and Centennial Place, and they provide services and own Euclid Villa. So those are our three permanent supportive housing projects. So the new one that we're proposing, Heritage Square South for very low income seniors, they and the developer Bridge Housing are getting ready to enter into an agreement for Union Station to do the same thing over there. And the little Caltrans house, they will probably master lease that house, and they will be their clients in there.
Union Station is part of the CES system.
Correct?
Wouldn't they be feeding names in for these open slots?
They do.
Usually, would you advertise on the website? Do you, is
Yeah.
that in addition to Union Station?
Yeah, we don't advertise our permanent supportive housing on the website because it's not like people can just apply and get in, because we use the CES, but we use the Pasadena preference also. So they have to be high acuity homeless persons, but they can be Pasadena high acuity homeless persons.
No.
Yeah.
One more question about these sites. Are they single units, or are they like?
They're all condominiums with the exception of the number 11.
So they could all be used by families or?
No, they're small. They're 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. One bedrooms and studios.
Okay, so
Except for the last house. That's a 3-bedroom house.
So individuals.
Individual couples. We have some couples, elderly couples living in some of them. Yeah.
And what does leasing up mean?
That meant at the time of the slide, we owned the units, but we were in the process of getting them ready to be leased up. They've all been leased up now with the exception of number 11. Number 11, we just closed escrow like 2 weeks ago. That's a Caltrans house. Okay. All right, so overconcentration. Historically, when people think of overconcentration of affordable housing, they think of overconcentration of poor quality affordable housing, because that's what they object to. It's like poor quality housing, there's too much of it together, and this has negatively impacted neighborhoods and the tenants in those developments. Poor quality, too many poor quality affordable housing units together in one area. Lower income neighborhoods tend to have fewer economically beneficial opportunities, jobs, schools, etc. And then geographically distributing affordable housing is generally an affordable housing goal. We're not trying to put all the affordable housing in one area, even though we are not producing, this last one, we're not producing poor quality housing, the projects, right? People say, oh, you're building the project. Our developments, as you've seen, are better than anything else in the neighborhood. And so they not only look better, but they are actually run better. And so none of our affordable housing projects have had a negative impact on the neighborhood. They haven't lowered anybody's property values, they haven't increased crime, they haven't done any of those things, and lowered the quality of life. And so, we are very determined to produce high quality affordable housing. And even doing that, we try not to overly locate them all in the same area. But when they happen to be in the same area, we don't think, as long as they're high quality housing, we don't think that that's a big issue. Yeah.
So my questions about that are, so much affordable housing is still kind of quite expensive, right? When you look at
affordable is relative. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, are the actual even income levels of folks who are moving into affordable housing, are they substantially lower than what else is in the neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the rents basically are about 30% of their income.
Right.
About 30%. Yeah. So some of these very low income units might be renting for $700 or $500 a month, or whether that's about 30% of the household's income. And those incomes have to be certified every year.
But most of your projects are a combination of affordable, low, and very low, right? It wouldn't be affordable units be more kind of actually matching the other.
Well, it depends. Yeah, we do have some. And I'll show you. I'll show you some statistics later on about our inclusionary housing, and yeah, it's a mix of moderate income, low, and very low.
Okay, but yeah, it is substantially lower on average.
Substantially. So this map shows you where our affordable housing units are, and there's about 3,800 of these units throughout the city. So the bigger dots are individual projects. The little yellow ones are Section 8 households. So the two primary ways that we produce affordable housing is either to provide a financial subsidy to the developer where they agree to keep the rents low for at least 55 years, or where we subsidize a household's rent and they go and they rent a unit out on the open market. But we subsidize the rent. The household pays about 30% of their income. We subsidize the rest. So that gives you the distribution.
So this is a map of affordable housing that the city is invested in?
And the other ones that we didn't necessarily invest in, but we know are deed restricted, like Pilgrim Tower, Kings Village, Community Arms.
Okay, but
Yeah.
a naturally occurring one that's...
No, not naturally. These are all deed restricted, or the rents are subsidized, directly subsidized.
So, Bill,
Mhm.
so if I kind of get an understanding of that legend,
Mm-hmm.
if I have the color brown, which is senior,
Mm-hmm.
and the size of that circle is the largest size, like if you go down to the, say, those two brown circles that are down to the lower left, yeah, those two brown circles,
Mhm.
that means the unit size, step back, look at the legend, that means the quantity of units
Yep.
in those two brown circles would be
Yep.
somewhere between 97 and 213.
Yep. And they're senior. Yep.
And they're seniors, so
Yep.
then the green ones would be similar.
Family.
Green would be
depending on the
family, and then
size.
the size of the green would be indicate the
That's
the
right.
quantity of
So
units
that's
in
Kings
place.
Village right there.
Got it.
Kings Village.
Got it,
Right.
okay.
Big old green.
And then the Westgate, I take it would be those brown ones down near the bottom?
Westgate is not seniors.
Westgate is not senior.
Westgate is
So
this
who are
one.
those two brown circles?
One is the Telecoup project.
The what?
Telecoup
What's
project.
Telecoup?
They're a nonprofit developer. It's the one that used to be at Union Hall. Senior housing right across the street, catty corner to the senior center.
Okay, so it's north of the freeway, because the
No,
blue.
no, no,
that
no,
gives
no,
us-
south of the
Senior
freeway.
center.
This is the freeway. The senior center. Senior center's over here. It's catty corner.
Oh, I'm
this
sorry,
one,
yeah,
catty
it's
corner
north
to the
of,
senior
so
center.
where's Colorado there? The blue line?
Colorado is.
It's gotta be the
yeah,
the
Colorado's
blue
this
line,
one right
okay.
here. Yep.
So then north of the blue line, that brown one. What
Yeah.
about the two brown ones south of the blue line? The south of Colorado, those
One
two
of those
blue.
is Concord, right?
Yeah, this is Concord, and this one is which one is that over there? I can't think of it at the moment.
Where's Centennial Place, is that included?
Yeah, Centennial Place is this big pink one, which is special needs housing, permanent supportive housing.
And I noticed that my eyes served me, District 6 and District 4 seem to be.
I can read this table because it's hard to see. Okay, District 1, the total units 275.
Okay, so you listed them by district.
Yeah, by
So
district.
District 6 and District 4, look like they have very few.
No, District 6 has the third most.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a big misconception. People think District 6 has very little housing. No, it has the third most. Okay? And it also has the emergency shelter, the adult center in that district too. So some folks have an idea that, oh, the District 6, they're slacking on. Not at all. Not at all.
Where's District 6?
District 6 is over here.
Okay.
But there's nothing there.
Yeah, all of this is District 6.
All of that.
Oh, okay.
Big circles.
Yep.
Well, I guess
Marengo is
I'm
kind of...
looking at District 4. What about District 4?
District 4 has very little.
A lot of Section 8 though.
No, not that many. Total of 86 over here, District 4.
Oh, that's, oh, I'm
Very,
sorry.
very little over here.
So District 4
Oh.
has the fewest.
Yeah, and this one it has, which is some new inclusionary units, but it's relatively new. Just been opened about less than 2 years.
So it looks like District 2.
So
has
District
the largest
2,
amount of Section 8.
District 2 has a lot of Section 8. Let's see.
South of the freeway between Colorado all the way
Senior
north to
Section 8.
Altadena.
Yeah, District 2 has the most. District 2 and District 3 have almost the same amount of Section 8, and District 5 has is pretty close also
Yeah.
in terms of Section 8. Okay. All right. So.
Is it okay if I share this PowerPoint with the others?
Sure.
Yeah,
That way you all can have this.
yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
If
Let
you
me.
sign in, I'll make sure
Bill?
you get it.
Yeah.
I understand Section 8 is kind of more of our, what's your take on Section 8 programs? Money available? Are vouchers available? Are landlords available?
Landlords, not as much, declining. That's the big problem. Vouchers available, some, but no new vouchers coming out of Washington, D.C. And yeah, those are the main problems. But mainly, very long waiting lists, When we opened our Section 8 waiting list, we opened it up for 2 weeks. We got 26,000 households applying for Section 8.
Did you say no new vouchers? For how long?
Rarely. They rarely come out. Rarely.
So since the election of Trump?
No, way before that. Way before that, yeah. Because the problem with rental assistance, just as a concept, rental assistance, let's subsidize people's rents. Rents never go down. So the cost of that program always grows. And if you look at HUD's budget, Section 8 program over the years has grown bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to become a huge portion of HUD's budget. Huge portion. And so they do everything they can to try to keep the cost down and not to expand the program. But the units that they have, just the units, the vouchers that they've made available, those vouchers, those costs, they don't come down. They always increase. And so that's why, if we build more affordable housing, you subsidize it once and then you don't need to subsidize it again, right? That's the concept. But the rental assistance, once you start down that road, it's all, that rental assistance is just keep going up and up and up. Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is the one topic that my daughter is extremely passionate about, so I have to ask you. Could you share how many people actually have vouchers and don't find rental?
Yeah, in Pasadena, we're definitely less than 50% of the people that get a voucher can actually use it. We're probably closer to around 40%. And that's not unusual, unfortunately. Again, because the Section 8 rents are less than the market rate rents by several $100s a month. And that's the key problem. I know there's legislation that prohibits landlords from discriminating against people's source of income, like Section 8, and that's all great, but that's not our main problem. Our main problem here is just that the market rate rents are so high, and they're much higher than the Section 8 rents, that landlords are like, I'll take the higher rent. Most people would make that choice. Most landlords would make that choice.
And would you just share how long people are on the waiting list on average before they actually get the voucher?
Well, different housing authorities manage their lists differently. So we create a new list about every 5 years. And so for us, it's 5 years, but the majority of people on our waiting list never get a voucher. They never get a voucher. And those who are offered a voucher, about 65% of them can end up not able to use them because of the lack of landlords.
Is it still about 23,000 on the list?
Oh no, we're way down, but it's still, I haven't checked recently, but we're probably at, 18,000? We have only 1,400 vouchers total, right? And they don't come available that often because people, when they get one, they keep it. I mean, especially if they can use it, they keep it.
How long are the vouchers good for?
Ever.
Oh. Yeah. No, like once you get a voucher.
Oh, once you get a voucher, you get 6 months to use it. But once you use it, you can use it for as long as you need it. That's why there is such demand. You have to be income qualified, yeah. But so the Section 8 program, it's a program that has been around, and it's been around for decades and decades. But it's a very difficult program to use. It's a very difficult program to use. So even somebody, when they're given a voucher, to qualify for Section 8, you have to be very low income, right? And so a lot of our 75% of our voucher holders or users, our Section 8 tenants, are seniors and or disabled persons. And so if you think about it, if you're a very low income, say a very low income senior, and you get a voucher, and now it's up to you to go and find a landlord to use it in a very tight rental market, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. So, all right, Jill said, move it along. Okay. The other thing that we're doing to geographically disperse affordable housing is our inclusionary housing program. So our inclusionary housing program requires developers to set aside a certain number of units for affordable housing or pay a very high fee so that we can use that money to build more affordable housing. So this shows you of the units that have been built on site or off site by the developer. These are the developer built units. You can see where they're at, and almost all of them are not in Northwest Pasadena. So the inclusionary housing program is doing a great job in helping to geographically disperse our affordable housing. Okay?
And this is under the inclusionary zoning ordinance.
Yep.
Great, thanks.
Oh, and then when you look at, the other thing you can look at is, there's an interesting phenomenon that's happening across the country, and that is when housing is built close to transit, it hasn't had the effect that people had hoped, which is where the people who live near the transit actually use the transit. Right, so we know if you've been paying attention to the MTA here, that their ridership levels have gone backwards by several decades, despite billions invested in new rail lines and lots of housing built around a lot of these stations. You think about Hollywood, downtown LA, or Culver City, and Pasadena. Lots of this housing has been built. The problem is that the housing is almost all very high-end housing. Yeah. And households that are high-end tend not to use public transportation or not to use it very much. So the real goal is not just to build housing near transit, but to build affordable housing near transit, because low and moderate income households use transit at a much higher rate than higher income. So if you look at the inclusionary units, those little MTAs, those are our light rail stations. And you can see how close they are, and when you put in the transit-oriented districts, almost all of them are in transit-oriented districts. So these are really like home runs. When you get affordable housing, high-quality affordable housing near transit, that's fantastic. And the city hasn't subsidized any of these. These are all been developer subsidized. Yeah.
The circle diameter, is that like a mile across?
Half mile.
Half mile?
Yeah, across diameter is half mile. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's very close then.
Yep. Okay, so inclusionary has been very positive. And let me just show you a little bit more about inclusion. So how many inclusionary units have we produced here in Pasadena? The answer is 1,067. And the way it's broken down is these are the units that the developers built, but the developers, as I mentioned, could pay a very high fee to the city, and then the city uses it to build more units, and these are the units that are built with that money. So you add them together, we have 579 units actually built on-site or off-site by the developer, and another 488 built subsidized by the city of other affordable housing.
Is that with the inclusionary fee?
Yeah, with inclusionary money. With inclusionary money. Right? And
in the in-lieu fees.
Yeah, those are the in-lieu fees. This is what the in-lieu fees have done. 488 units. And here you can start to see the income mix of what we have. Very low, low, and moderate income units. And you can see the split between rental and for sale. So a couple things. For the units that the developers have built, most of them have been rental. 89% have been rental. That means the developers of the condos have mostly been paying the fees. Okay, so that's one thing. Most of the units have been, over half of the units have been moderate income that have been built. So 315 units built here, low 102, very low 162. Okay, for the units that, so when a condo developer pays the fee, they either have to build moderate income units or they have to pay the fee. Okay? So if they actually built the units up here instead of paid the fee, they would have built more moderate income units. Okay? But when they paid the fee to us, what we use them for is to build primarily rental units and very low income rental units. So we've taken the in-lieu fee and leveraged other dollars and deepened the affordability, which is much better than we would have gotten if the developers had just built the units themselves. Yeah.
When did the 20% kick in? The new 20%?
Unknown yet, but soon. If I had to guess, well, it'll be sometime sometime before the new fiscal year begins. So here,
Before next July.
so here you can see the in lieu fee went to almost the same ratio here. 87% went to rental and 13% went to ownership. But the rentals are almost all very low income. 87% of them were very low income units. So the important thing about this is that some people have said, oh, we should just do away with the in lieu fee. Well, if we did away with the in lieu fee, we couldn't do Marv's Place, we couldn't do Heritage Square South, we couldn't do these kind of projects because the inclusionary units pretty much are just generic units. They're not special needs units. They're not units that hit our top priority, for instance, of housing homeless seniors. Okay? Yes.
On the adjacency to the transit zones, would you say that it's possible that because the inclusionary rate was so low, and the development over the last 10 years has brought in higher income people into those transit areas, and that has led to the traffic problems that neighborhoods like to complain about, and that with the higher inclusionary rate, then population will come in that will actually use the transit rather than home, so you'd see some relief over time.
Well, you have to ask the transit department about the statistics, but certainly lower income households have a lower rate of car ownership, for sure, than higher income households. So you would think that would be the case, yeah. You would think, but I don't have the statistics for it. So what have we been doing? So we strengthened our tenant protection ordinance recently. We've strengthened the inclusionary ordinance. We are rolling out right now new programs, new homeless programs funded by HEAP and CASH and Measure H, this alphabet soup. HEAP and CASH is basically state surplus dollars. So when the state budget had a surplus, the state allocated a certain amount for homeless programs. And so we got some, and they called it, the first year they called it HEAP, the second year they called it CASH, or maybe it was the other way. No, it was CASH first, and then HEAP second, and now the third year it's going to be called HAPS. Why? I don't know. I don't know why. But basically, it's money from the state budget for homeless programs. And we appreciate that money, and we go after, we take every bit of it that we can, but you have to keep in mind, these are one-time funding sources. They're one-time. Homelessness is not a one-time problem. So one-time money is somewhat useful, but it's not the best kind of money to deal with long-term problems. So there's kind of a mismatch there. It could be much better if they gave us like long-term money. Measure H money, this is the county sales tax that was approved 3 years ago, and that's at least for 10 years, going on for 10 years. So we are rolling out a number of programs there. For instance, a big chunk of our Measure H money is going towards motel vouchers. And that's because we have a number of people who will not utilize, a large segment of the homeless population will not utilize shelters because they're afraid to go there, because they can't take their pets there, because they can't take their things there, because they don't want to lose their spot, wherever their spot happens to be. They don't want to lose their community. There's lots of reasons why folks don't go into homeless shelters. So what we did was we allocated several $100,000 to nonprofits, local nonprofits, to provide motel vouchers. And so folks who won't go into a shelter, a motel is a much better, much more attractive option. You can keep your dog, you can keep your stuff, you can have your own private room, you don't have to share, you're not in a big congregated environment, you don't have to share bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. So it's much better. So we have motel vouchers that are longer term. We have enough money in there to provide longer term motel vouchers so somebody can get off the street, get into a motel, and then get connected to services and to housing. Instead of saying, hey, we have a shelter bed for you, and they're like, no thanks, I don't want to go in there. It's much easier to connect them to services when we have them in a set location like a motel. Yeah.
When they're in the motel, do they get the kind of sustainable services?
Yes.
From the health departments and whatever that can help them?
Yeah, they get whatever service, they get connected to whatever services they need and that they will accept.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so then we are also working on a potential, so these are potential, okay, potential project with the Salvation Army, potential permanent supportive housing project with them. We are also working potential with Hathaway Sycamores, a TAY, Transition Age Youth Access Center and Bridge Housing, also used to be called Emergency Shelter, for youth here in Pasadena. We have very, very few, we don't have as many services for transition age youth. We don't have a high amount of transition age youth, but if you include the homeless students in the community college system, then there's quite a population, so we want to be able to address that. We are working on a project down on Lincoln and Orange Grove, an affordable homeownership project. We have a couple projects with Habitat for Humanity. These are also affordable homeownership projects. And then we have some other potential affordable housing projects that are a little too early even to mention, but there are some more irons in the fire. Who knows what will happen to the YWCA? So proposals came in yesterday. There were 10 proposals. I understand, I believe 2 of them are affordable housing.
All right.
Yeah. And then we don't know what's going to happen to Chang Commons.
Is there a way to get those, as a common?
Not yet. Not yet.
We won't be able to see them until.
Not yet.
I don't know exactly when, but at some point, of course, there'll be a public discussion about the proposals, but that's all being handled out of our economic development office. Chang Commons, which is part of the Fuller Seminary site, that has a number of deed-restricted affordable housing units. We'd like to see those preserved, and then there are a number of state housing bills for things like just cause and anti-gouging and ADUs and streamlining and all kinds of things that are potentially going to be signed. We will know in about within the next 3 weeks. So that's what's going on. We got a lot of stuff going on, so that's it.
Questions, but I think you all asked such excellent questions during the time that we need to probably